Windows, Mac, or Chromebook? Which one of these should you buy for college? Here's a hint. It's not a Chromebook. Welcome to Raising Your IT IQ. My name is James, and if it's your first time in college or maybe it's time for an upgrade, you're probably wondering what kind of computer do I actually need? Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know which option is best for you. Now let's get the Chromebook out of the way first. The reason why we don't recommend Chromebooks is because you can't install software on them. Some of your classes might require you to use Kaltura. Now while you can use Kaltura Express through the web browser, we don't recommend that. We recommend that you actually download the Kaltura software and use that. And for the lockdown browser, there is an extension for Chrome, but it's clunky and it just doesn't work very well. I've seen too many students have issues with it and just get frustrated. So what do you need? To start with, you're going to need a computer with a full operating system like Windows or macOS. If you're wondering if you can use an iPad, I'll cover that a little bit later. So now that we've got the Chromebook out of the way, the big question is, do you go with Windows or do you go with Mac? Just as a disclaimer, I use both, and while they both have their flaws, I like them equally for different reasons. So I'll start with Windows. It's the most popular operating system, and everybody and their mama's mommy uses Windows, therefore it's the most compatible. If you're a business major, this is what you'll probably need, especially since Microsoft Project is only available on Windows. If you have a desktop PC, you can fully upgrade it. And usually if you have a Windows laptop, you can at least upgrade the internal storage and the RAM pretty easily. And then there's gaming. As it stands now, whether you're a casual or hardcore gamer, Windows is king. This is pretty much the only reason why I had a PC, but it's not all sunshine and unicorns. Windows has its flaws, and there's some pretty big ones. Starting with hardware compatibility. Something that can be considered good and bad is the sheer amount of different PCs to choose from. There's 100 different brands with 100 different models that all have different specs, and it can be a nightmare trying to figure out what to buy. And because there are so many different manufacturers and brands making PC parts, you oftentimes run into compatibility issues because one program doesn't like the hardware you're using, and now you have to spend precious time trying to troubleshoot the issue. This ranges from keyboards and mice to the video card that connects to your monitor, and then there's the viruses. Windows is notorious for how easily it is to get infected. So now you have to spend money on virus protection, and most antivirus software is a monthly subscription now. Also, antivirus software itself causes a lot of issues, especially with the lockdown browser, and it prevents it from running. Now, before you come at me in the comments about how Macs get viruses too, I'll get to that in just a bit. But first, if you find this or my other IT IQ videos helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would definitely help out me and you. Now, on to macOS. Macs are relatively easy to use, and in my opinion, more reliable than Windows. Installing software is as easy as dragging an icon to a folder, and uninstalling software is as simple as dragging it to the trash. Now, because Apple makes all of its own hardware, the buying process is also far less complicated. You just have to ask yourself, do I want a laptop or a desktop, and what's my budget? And to be honest, you're getting a huge value for the price you pay because as long as you take care of them, these will last at least 5 years. Now, contrary to popular belief, you don't have to spend a ton of money to get one. Apple also has an education discount that gives you $100 off of any of their computers and iPads as long as you have a student or staff email account. Apple is also one of the only companies I'm comfortable buying refurbished computers from. My previous MacBook Pros were refurbished and they last me about 6 years. At home, I have the new base model Mac Mini that only has 8 GB of RAM, and it runs all of my video production software from Adobe like a champ. But just like Windows, there are some drawbacks. First, if you've never used a Mac, there's a slight learning curve. Thankfully, if you're a Palm Beach State student, you have access to LinkedIn Learning for free, and there's some really good courses there that will teach you the basics of getting started. I'll put a link to one of those in the description. Second is software compatibility. There may be some classes that require Windows-only software. For example, if you're a business major and you need to use Microsoft Project, that is only available on Windows. Yes, you could run Windows virtually with something like Parallels, but the Respondent's Lockdown browser won't work if you do. It will recognize that you're running a virtual machine. And lastly, to get macOS working with Canvas, Lockdown Browser, and Kaltura, there are some tweaks you have to do in the system settings. I discuss all those in my Kaltura and Lockdown Browser videos, and I'll put links to those in the description. Now, I want to touch on the iPad for just a moment before I wrap it up. iPads are compatible with most everything you'll need to do during your college career. It works with the Lockdown Browser as long as your professor allows it. It works with Microsoft Office, Kaltura, and Canvas. However, I only recommend using one as a supplement to your main computer because if your professor doesn't allow the Lockdown browser to be used on iPads, you're in a lot of trouble. Other than that, I think they're a good device to have just for the sake of portability. I carry one around with me all the time. I also have a keyboard and an Apple Pencil for it. Because I like to take all of my notes digitally, especially when I'm in meetings. I'm not wasting a lot of paper. I can just take the notes, and then if I need to type something, I'll have a keyboard there and I can attach the keyboard. So now we come to the decision-making process. It's going to come down to your major. If you're a business major, probably just go with a Windows PC. It's going to be the most compatible for you and the least frustrating, I think. Now, for other programs, specifically if you're doing anything in the creative field, I would recommend a Mac because they do run production software and photography software a lot better than PC. I have had a lot of stability issues with Adobe software on PCs, but when I run them on my Mac, they work just fine. Now, just a word of caution. If you've never used a Mac before and you want to switch from Windows, wait until between semesters. The two operating systems are entirely different, and if you're trying to learn a whole new system in the middle of the semester, you're just going to get frustrated. I've had several students call me because it's like after the semester started, they needed a new laptop, so they went from Windows to a Mac, and now they don't know how to use their computer, they don't know how to install the software, they don't know how to pretty much do anything on it, and now they're frustrated. But if you did make the switch and you needed help learning how to use macOS, remember, I'll put a link in the description to a getting started video course on LinkedIn Learning. If you didn't know already, you have access to LinkedIn Learning for free with your Palm Beach State student account or staff account. Now, if you have any more questions or you want more information, please email my department at onlinestudentssupport@palmbeachstate.edu. Thank you so much for watching Raising Your IT IQ. My name is James, and remember, breathe, find your Zen, and I'll see you in the next one.